Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
What's up, Knight fans? Jeff Sharon here. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, along with Eric Lopez. The football season continues to roll on here, and boy, did we need that one, Eric, didn't we?
It was nice for a change to have a game that was already decided, and UCF was on the positive end of it, not the negative end.
I know. It feels like a while since we've blown out somebody, but it was nice to do it, and it was nice to do it down in FIU as well. So, like we said, welcome once again. We're going to talk UCF football tonight. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the change in the schedule with Texas moving back, some Big 12 talk, and also we're going to touch upon what's going on with volleyball and women's and men's soccer. Don't forget, you can reach out to us via Twitter at UCF_Banneret. You can also reach out to me individually at Jeff_Sharon and Eric Lopez at Eric Lopez Elo. Sign up for our email newsletters at blackandgoldbanneret.com, and you can hit us up on Facebook as well. So, well, Lopez, let's put a bow on this FIU blowout, 53-14. Considering that two of the more painful losses that UCF has suffered in the last 5 years have come at the hands of FIU, this felt good. Now, this FIU team, we said going into it, they're a bad football team. And Ron Turner, their head coach, was fired less than 24 hours after the game was over. I'm not a fan of firing coaches in the middle of the season. If they want to resign, that's on them. But they're a bad football team, and we did what we were expected to do, did we not?
Yeah, that's really my thoughts on the game. I don't get too high or low about those type of things. They did what they were supposed to do. No, they did what they were supposed to do. They needed to go in there and take care of business against FIU, which I think is one of the 5 worst teams probably in college football right now. Their program is in disarray, and it's been in disarray since they got rid of Mario Cristobal, and that has backfired on them. I questioned the Ron Turner hire from day one, not that many care, but I do. I'm from down there, so I know the FIU program actually pretty well. And the university pretty well, and I just don't think they can compete at a high level consistently with what they're dealing with. And so instead of being critical of Mario Cristobal for whatever, they should have been celebrating him and just let him coach as long as he wanted to. But that's a whole other story for another day. UCF did what they had to do. They took care of business, really dominated from the get-go and never gave FIU a chance to have a thought that they might have a chance in this game. And that's what you need to do against a team like FIU, who was playing with a very low confidence. We can relate to what they're going through. We went through this last year. So it was a good performance all around. I don't know, if I put a lot of stock into what that means moving forward, because again, FIU's not very good and you're going to face better teams than that moving forward. But I think you feel good that they put a game together like that and move, and now they have some confidence and some momentum heading into conference play.
My first thought on the game was, okay, this is what it's supposed to look like. You're supposed to, under the Scott Frost Oregon philosophy, it's jump out on top, score a quick touchdown on your first drive, be aggressive and get the 2 to go up 8-0, not because the 1 point matters, but just to gain a psychological advantage on your opponent and establish yourself as the hyper-aggressor in the game. They did so successfully. FIU came back, scored a touchdown of their own to make it 8-7 after a special teams blunder. But then after that, it was over. 45 consecutive points for UCF. Mackenzie Milton looked great, I thought. made the key throws, made the right decisions. Did leave after taking a pretty tough hit on a roughing the passer call, but in general, I think that was precautionary just to get him out of there because they knew that it was basically garbage time. Did have a concern over the Juwan Hamilton injury, although he came back and said that he's okay. He's back out there practicing now. I'll tell you, but watching that team perform the way they did, and that was a real performance. The first time we've seen a true performance in the sense of the word from the offense in a long time. This was I was really impressed. I was like, boy, if this is what it's supposed to look like when this team gets its feet underneath it with the new offense and the new scheme and the new coaching staff and whatnot, it's going to get fun around here real quick. Now, I know it's against FIU, but I can see UCF as they get the athletes putting up numbers like that in the American. Do you?
Well,
maybe not now, but like in the future.
That's the vision that Scott Frost has. So, yeah, that's the goal, as I mentioned, for them moving forward. Now, how long does that take? And I think that's the question everybody has is how long before you get it to where you want it to be? Is it a year, 2 years? Is it this year? I think that's the question is, can they do that kind of a performance in conference? I think they can against certain teams, but that's kind of what's interesting is, can this team sneak up, for example, and not only maybe qualify for a bowl game, but maybe make some noise in the conference? I mean, it's a conference that's got some questions. And you look at the first opponent here, the opening conference, East Carolina's got a lot of similar questions. They got a new head coach, Scotty Montgomery. And so, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think that's what's kind of intriguing about this is certainly where are both programs headed. And I think, yes, if you ask Scott Frost, I think he envisioned Saturday night against better quality opponents to happen on a frequent basis, probably sooner than later once he gets his players and his personnel in. Keep in mind, he's only had one recruiting class in, and you've seen the impact that his freshmen have already made, like Killings and company. Imagine giving them another recruiting signing class, one or two of them. So, I think that's the long-term vision goal for him and the program.
Yeah, Killins was a stud on Saturday night against FIU, and I can't wait to see more of him. And a perfect segue as we look forward to UCF's next game Saturday at noon on CBS Sports Network against East Carolina. It's the conference opener. It's in Greenville. Last time we were there, of course, you remember how that went. Hail Mary to Brashad Perriman. Boy, a lot has changed since then. That was on the last night of the regular season. This is the first conference game of the regular season for the Knights and for the Pirates. East Carolina, in the first two games, they come in 2-2, just as UCF does. Wins against Western Carolina and North Carolina State by 3 in the first two games at home. Then they went on the road, lost to South Carolina in a tight game by 5, 20-15, and then lost in Blacksburg to Virginia Tech and got blown out. Did not look good in that game, 54-17. So some numbers that I was able to pull up on the Pirates right now. Their offense is going to be a problem. They're 8th in the country in passing. This is kind of like the old Shane Carden days, right? 368 yards passing per game. Now, part of that is because, garbage time against Virginia Tech. But you got to be at least impressed with putting up those kinds of numbers against North Carolina State and at South Carolina. Not a very good rushing team. UCF's a better rushing team. They're 90th in the country in rushing, but total offense, top 15. They're 14th in the nation in back of the passing offense. I think this can play into UCF's hands in the following respect. We saw how aggressive the defense got against FIU when they gave up the ghost on the run and decided we're going to have, that's it, we got to throw. And this plays right into that UCF Fierce, hashtag UCF Fierce or whatever, defense, where you try to force turnovers, bend but don't break, force turnovers, and that could present some opportunities for UCF. Philip Nelson, the quarterback for East Carolina, senior, through 4 games, is 5th in the nation in passing yards, with almost 1,500 passing yards so far this season on 122 completions, 9 touchdowns, and 3 picks. But the question is, as I look at the ECU defense, their defense has been pretty weak. They're ranked in the 70s mostly, 72nd against the run, which I think also presents an opportunity for UCF as well, given how good the rushing game has been for the Knights. So I don't know. I think this could be a tight one if things go the way we hope they will, right?
Well, yeah. East Carolina, first of all, keep in mind, they played NC State and Charlotte. Mm-hmm. They then played at South Carolina. I know South Carolina's not very good, but they're an SEC caliber team.
Yeah, lost by 5.
In a game that they outplayed them, they turned the ball over a lot in that game, did East Carolina. They should have won the game if you watch the game. And then I think they were on empty against Virginia Tech, and Blacksburg's a tough place to play. I mean, that's a tough schedule to play. NC State and Charlotte, at South Carolina, at Virginia Tech. A salute to ECU for doing that. But you're right. They've struggled a little bit running the football. They've been inconsistent. They definitely could throw the football, but they've turnovers, and it really has cost them in those games. And I think physically they've been beaten up by those teams as well, and I think that might explain some of their issues, stopping the run and so forth. But, that's what's interesting. Now they're home for a conference opener, noon game against UCF, and it'll be interesting. I agree with you. I mean, UCF's clearly going to try and run the football. That's their bread and butter. They're going to run the football. And can East Carolina slow it down? But then the concern becomes a time of possession situation. Because UCF's going so fast, do you leave your defense too much on the field against that East Carolina offense? That's what's will be very intriguing to watch as this game unfolds. But you're right. I think UCF's defense, and they've done a good job of this, and that's force some turnovers. Make some plays, get off the field. Give your offense a great opportunity in the short field. You're absolutely right. That's a key factor in this football game. I think UCF's going to give up yardage, but can they, A, force turnovers, and B, hold them to field goals? And because that's what's kind of been the bugaboo for East Carolina in that South Carolina loss in particular.
Isn't that though doesn't that even out in a game like this? Like, for example, I mean, if East Carolina is racking up a bunch of yards through the air, which, by the way, UCF's pass defense this year, 19th in the country in total defense right now through 4 games, and 27th in team pass efficiency defense, allowing 107.51. But doesn't that even out when you have 2 offenses like this? And, in fact, it may come to UCF's advantage in that they are running the football. And so if you throttle back the offense a little bit, you can play ball control and keep the ball away from ECU's passing offense. This may play into UC. I'm thinking, obviously, with my black and gold colored glasses on, but I think that could play into UCF's hands. 26th best rushing offense in the country, facing that weak rush defense for ECU. I think we have we're going to have some opportunities to run the football unless ECU suddenly decides that they're going to get hyper aggressive, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to try and basically force your true freshman quarterback to beat him. That would be what I'm doing if I'm ECU, certainly, and it's going to be up to Mackenzie Milton in this game to come through against the Pirates team that's going to throw a bunch of different looks at him and try and belie their rankings and their numbers to this point in the year, and try and really confuse him out there. Lord knows FIU didn't do much to confuse him, did they?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean you did well against FIU. That's one thing, but East Carolina, turnovers again. It's going to be a factor. UCF can't give East Carolina a short field. That's the thing. There's I think it's a roller coaster game. I mean it's going to be a roller coaster,
high scoring game.
I think momentum will be back and forth. The good news for UCF, I like from a UCF perspective, is I like the fact it's a noon game as opposed to a night game. That place is wild. It is loud. Mm-hmm. I think it's maybe, and people aren't going to like some people won't. They're hearing this aren't going to like this comment, but I think East Carolina from a football atmosphere in the conference, might be among the best, if not the best, at that Boneyard there at that stadium. And I know people that have gone to those games have had a good time with that. We all remember that 2 years ago, how loud it could be when East Carolina things were going well. Mm-hmm. And think about it. UCF's only won twice there at East Carolina. We talked about what it took 2 years ago. UCF almost blew the big league. You had the big Hail Mary to win it. And then the other win they did was back in 2005, I believe. And that was a come-from-behind victory, as I recall. So not an easy place to play is kind of my point. So they'll be challenged. But you're right. I think UCF's going to get their yards, and I think they're going to get their points, and I think East Carolina will get their yards and get their points. It's going to come down to which team either defense forces turnovers, and I think, red zone. Yeah. How many are you settling for field goals? Are you going for touchdowns? And in Scott Frost's case, that'll be interesting because as we saw in the Maryland game, Jeff, he's not afraid to go for it on fourth down. So don't assume that, hey, it's 4th and 3 from the 15. He's just going to kick. He might go for it. So very interesting game. But I think it should be an entertaining game. Look, I think the offense will have success. And it's a big turnaround from last year when you really didn't have a lot of confidence in either side of the ball doing anything. So what's fascinating to me is how quickly he has changed the personality, Jeff, of this offense to the point where I think you feel going in, you feel pretty good that they can move the football. And that's not just us. Those are now the opponents are realizing that. Scotty Montgomery this week, Jeff, in the teleconference, talked about how the UCF's offense, everybody's having some fun.
Look forward to a great, exciting matchup. Coach Frost has done a good job with this group. They've also had some big-time games in non-conference schedules, so they'll be battle-tested as well. And we're looking forward to getting to the AAC. What he's been able to do is he's been able to completely change the culture from an offensive standpoint. They look like they're having a good time. Also, you got to have a lot of respect for someone that can get a freshman ready to play, and he has McKenzie ready to play. And moving forward, I think he's going to be a good option for him. He's got a lot of talent outside as well. And, Traquan Smith was the Rookie of the Year last year in the AAC. That doesn't go lightly. And he's done a good job until this point. But it looks like they're having a good time playing football despite who they play. They played some big-time opponents, and they've done well.
Boy, isn't it something? What a difference a year makes. Hearing Scotty Montgomery say that about UCF's offense, which was, I mean, gosh, I don't mean to bring it up again, but it was so dreadful last year. And by the way, I wanted to second you on that point you made about the Boneyard. I would argue that the three best non-UCF home field advantages in the conference are at East Carolina at the top, followed by Cincinnati and Houston. I think that with the on-campus stadium at Houston, that things have really when it's jumping. Those are three nasty places to play, and we're going to find that out on Saturday too. I mean, we have one there before, obviously, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. But but going back to the offense, boy, it's really something hearing these coaches talk about how, and that's coming off of looking at the film. Man, they know what they're looking at on Sundays when they get the tape, and I'm sure they look at this saying, "Wow, this is a whole new ball game that we're preparing for against UCF." So, what do you do?
Right, that's going to be the question. What do you do? But that's what's intriguing, though. At the same time, and Scott Frost alluded to this in the teleconference he was in. Scotty Montgomery, he's trying to change the program over there in the culture, and he feels that UCF's got to play better than they have played so far. They certainly they could have been 3-1. They're off to a good start, but they're going to have to get better if they want to do in conference, especially East Carolina.
We played the most complete game we've played. Thought we improved in all three phases. East Carolina is going to be a test. They're a physical, aggressive team. We're looking forward to playing conference games. Our goal is to improve every week, and we have done that. I would love to be 4-0 or 3-1 right now, so we're never going to be satisfied. But I know that we've been a better team every week that we've played, and if we stay on that course, I think we're going to be in every game that we play this year the rest of the way and have a chance to win them. And then it just comes down to which way the ball bounces and whether or not we can make plays when it matters. And I think this conference is so good top to bottom that a lot of things have to go right, and we have to play our best game.
Well, I think we learned, the good thing that I thought from last week's game and heading into this East Carolina game is that it looked like UCF really did learn from their errors that they committed against Maryland, which is what we were hoping for. The other thing that I was really encouraged by is how much confidence both sides of the ball are playing with right now. This is a team that had zero confidence last year, and they're playing confident football for the first time in really since the end of the Fiesta Bowl year. After they had all those heart-stopping games where they realized that it didn't really matter if we have a shot at the end of the game, we're going to get it. And as a fan, that's fun to see when you see your team, when you see your school and your team have that level of confidence.
They have. You're right, Jeff. They have. But I want to see this team on the road, and I'm throwing out the Michigan game. I mean, that's a whole different animal, different beast.
Yeah, I would too. Yep.
I want to see how this team handles the road at East Carolina in a very intense situation, back and forth game, and how do they handle it? I'll be very intrigued by that. And so we'll see what happens on Saturday. I think it'll be interesting to see what they learn and how they come out. I think we'll have a better idea of what this team is capable of doing the rest of the season based on how they perform on this Saturday. If they were to win against East Carolina and look impressive, I think the conversation now all of a sudden is like, wow, hey, all of a sudden we're 3-2, and maybe this team could challenge and be at the top of the Eastern Division and be a bold team. Whereas if this team loses, then you're like, well, all right, we're pretty much, we're still building. We're still building. So it's an interesting game. For both sides. And I think East Carolina fans are probably saying the same thing about their situation. So very interesting game. And the fact that both sides are trying to figure out who they are as far as moving forward with the new coaching staff, I think makes this game very intriguing.
Yeah, I had this game at the start of the year down as an L for UCF, but I'm pulling up the line here. The latest line, it depends on where you look, but actually pretty much everything is 3.5 for East Carolina on the home field.
And the money's been on UCF in that, because I believe when the week started, East Carolina was anywhere between a 6 and 7 point.
Yeah, it got knocked down. It got knocked down from 7. So a lot of people are jumping on the UCF bandwagon. I'm going to be interested to see if that line moves again late with regard to that. So, like I said, noon kickoff on Saturday. It's going to be on CBS Sports Network.
That's right. Dave Ryan, your old buddy.
My old college professor, Dave Ryan. Gosh, don't let him. Dave, I'm sorry if you're listening to this. I can't believe I just called you my old college professor. But my professor from Syracuse, Dave Ryan, will be on the call once again, as he was for the Maryland game as well.
Correct. Yeah, he'll be calling the game with Corey Chavis, former NFL player for the Minnesota Vikings, defensive back, and Mellon Collins down on the sideline. And actually, Dave Ryan, depending on when you're listening to this, will be on Tuck and O'Neill on Friday. So the show from 3 to 6:30, 3 to 7. I will be filling in for Jerry because Jerry will be traveling. We're up to Greenville for the football game, so it'll be yours truly and Mike Tuck. And I'll get to chat with Dave Ryan, who I have worked with. I have worked as his spotter in the past for when he's done UCF home games. Great guy, and I really enjoy chatting with him every time I get a chance to see him when he's doing either UCF football games or basketball games for CBS Sports Network. Very smart. I learned a lot when I worked with him as a spotter, and you can attest to that. Very attention to detail, very cool, down to earth, very always prepared.
Yeah, you learn exactly why. I took his sports reporting class when I was in grad school at Syracuse. Yeah.
Super talented. It calls lacrosse. I think he's, the best lacrosse voice in the country. That's not an easy sport to call. And he calls it, obviously being from Syracuse. That's a big deal with lacrosse, but he calls that on the national landscape with radio. He does basketball. He could do. There's not a sport he can't do.
He was one of ESPN's hockey guys when ESPN had the NHL still.
That's a great point. You're right. Hockey guy, versatile, very versatile. He could do sideline. That's what he did at ESPN for a while as well. So I'm a big fan of his, and it's always been tremendous. And he's got a good deal going with Corey Chavis. I know they've, he's been working with a lot of analysts, but Chavis has kind of been there now the last couple of years. When you look at the CBS Sports Network, they're 1A, 1B type of a group. I mean, they have Carter Blackburn with Aaron Taylor's another group they like, but Ryan and they usually do the marquee American Conference games for that network.
Yep, 2 Syracuse guys, Carter Blackburn and Dave Ryan on their crews. So
unbelievable!
I know. What a
How many
surprise.
Syracuse people you got?
It's almost like you got to ask who are the guys who aren't Syracuse guys that are doing play-by-play on these networks. So 12 noon on CBS Sports Network, UCF and East Carolina. All right, when we get back, we got a little schedule news for UCF coming up after the break, and what that has to do with the stupid Big 12 story that everyone in UCF land now hates all of a sudden. Stick around. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Back after this.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fegley.
This is Trey Strelka with the UCF Nightline Podcast, the original, the #1 rated UCF sports podcast.
You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. On Twitter, it's UCF_Nightline and at www.ucfnightlinepodcast.com.
Be sure to subscribe to us as well on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
And when you get sick of listening to these guys, make sure you look us up.
Don't forget, that's the UCF Nightline Podcast. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now, back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Thank you, Trace, and welcome back to the fastest growing UCF sports podcast, the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon along with Eric Lopez with you once again. And let's talk a little bit about the Big 12, our favorite topic of discussion. And this all started actually earlier this week. UCF announced that their 2017 expected matchup with Texas on the non-conference schedule is being pushed back to 2023. So what that means is UCF in 2017, this is kind of nice. The Knights are going to have 7 home games, 3 non-conference games at home, 1 non-conference game on the road, and then the usual suspects in conference. 4 conference games at home, 4 on the road, of course, in the American. So, with regard to that situation, Eric, now I remember it was you who told me that if you want to know what schools are thinking in terms of conferences and realignment and all that kind of stuff, look at their future schedules and see who they're playing and where they're playing them and when they're playing them. So UCF pushes back against Texas 6 years. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells you, like, hey, if the UCF's ever in the Big 12, that's an easy switcheroo, right? I mean, that's an easy game to maneuver. Now, I believe this was a move that was done by UCF, at least according to the Texas press release, which was my favorite part about this, how Texas pretty much went out of their way to say, per UCF's request. Yeah. That was entertaining. I don't know if this is – I don't think there's a connection to the Big 12 realignment in this particular case. I think this was a case where, from UCF standpoint, you look at the schedule. They are hosting Georgia Tech next year, September 16th. They go to Maryland, September 23rd. And I think if you're playing at Texas – a week before the Georgia Tech game, a Texas team that's going to return a lot of personnel from a very young, talented football team, including Buechele, the quarterback, and among others. Let's be honest here, Jeff. That's probably not a game UCF's going to be really have a great shot to winning. Keep in mind that would be year 2 of Scott Frost. You're still building a program.
Yeah, but Texas right now is starting to finally get some momentum under Charlie Strong, aren't they?
No, they are. That's what I'm saying. I think when you're building a program like UCF, I think Scott, the philosophy is we're not ready for that stage, per se. Look what happened with the Michigan game. And I'm a proponent of I'm all good for playing those games. I think you have to go out there and play those games. But there is the thought you play those games. If you get your brains beat, you lose some confidence. And then let's say you play that game next year at Texas and you lose. Now all of a sudden you got a quick turnaround. You got to play Georgia Tech. Now you lose that game. Now things could snowball for your season. So you look at it now. They're going to open the season with FIU at home. as of now that's going to be interesting. September 9th now is open. It's a bye week. Now, there are some teams in the conference that have the same bye date on September 9th, and the American has scheduled games in week 2 of the season. I don't believe UCF will be involved in that, but maybe they would. Who knows? But the main thing is if they don't schedule a conference game there, UCF will have 2 weeks to prepare for Georgia Tech, which if Paul Johnson is still the head coach at Georgia Tech at this time next year, that means you get 2 weeks to prepare for that triple option.
At home,
which is not an easy offense to prepare with. I know some people on UCFsports.com and the message boards and others have thrown out the idea, hey, if they play Navy on the 9th, for example, who runs a similar offense to Georgia Tech, that's a bit of an advantage. I don't agree with that because, first of all, Navy's.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't agree with that either. Navy could be pretty good.
Correct. Well, that and Navy's a conference game, so I don't want to tune up with a conference game. So I don't buy now. And we're making a lot of assumptions. I'm the one that is not convinced that Paul Johnson will even be there at Georgia Tech next year. We'll see how they do the rest of the year. But I think if Georgia Tech has a mediocre year, coming off a mediocre year last year with new athletic director Todd Stansberry, by the way.
That's correct. That broke earlier in the week that he's now the athletic director at his alma mater, Georgia Tech.
There'll be a lot of friends, old buddies, seen at that Georgia Tech UCF game. I have a feeling.
I would not
year.
be surprised if that's the George O'Leary statue game. That's got to be a lock, right?
Yeah, if you had to make a Vegas odds, that's even money, right? He'll be there. Stansberry's there. I agree with that. But so look, that's the strategy with the schedule. I know some people are disappointed because they were planning on going to Texas and it's a big game and all that. But there are different philosophies into that. And so look, I think Scott Frost would tell you, look, if we beat FIU, now we got 2 weeks to prepare for Georgia Tech. You win that game, you're 2-0. You got some momentum going into Maryland. Maybe you steal that. Now all of a sudden you might have a 9-10 win year. But more importantly, you're still building confidence into a young team. This is still going to be a young team next year, Jeff. In particular, with a young quarterback still, you still got young running backs. You're going to add more freshmen into another class into that. So I think if this was 4 or 5 years down the road and the program has been established, I think they would have kept that Texas game. But I think, a combination of reasons, I think that's probably why that change was made. What's interesting for me, I will be completely honest with you. I'm curious how the schedule will break out because UCF will travel to Maryland and to Navy next year in the Baltimore. I have family up there. So I actually have a place to stay. So I'm intriguing. I hope that those two games are separated in that the Maryland game's already in September. So I would like the Navy game to be in October or November. I don't want both to be in September, let's say, or a week or two after that, because then I'm not going to make 2 trips back to back like that. But I might make 2 trips. And I think some UCF fans might feel the same way. They might go to Maryland in September and may go back for Navy in October or November, late October, November, but they won't do the same trip back-to-back weeks. So it's going to be interesting how the schedule plays out from that standpoint.
I would love to make that trip, by the way, to D.C. because I love Washington, D.C. Maryland in College Park, right down the way, just outside the Beltway.
So here's the question then, out to the audience. Which one would you pick if you can only pick, if you don't want to make that trip twice, right? Because technically it's the same trip. Annapolis, and I've been to a Maryland game actually in 2013. I've been to that stadium. They played FIU that year when I went up there for Labor Day weekend to see family. Would you rather go to the Maryland game or would you rather go to the Navy game?
From a purely touristy fan perspective, I would go to the Navy game. Because
I think that
Annapolis is beautiful, and nothing against D.C., which I lived a place where I lived briefly, and actually I met my wife there. But it is congested; it is a pain in the neck to get around. If you want to go visit D.C. from Annapolis, it's only about a 45-minute drive.
Correct.
And but you have the option to do that. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Plus, Annapolis is just a beautiful little town. It's great to go on a little. I went up there for a wedding a couple years ago. You get a little tour of the U.S. Naval Academy, which is astoundingly small. It is tiny. I've been on high schools that were bigger campuses.
So you've been there.
Yeah, I've been to Annapolis before, but it is a beautiful little town. Great food. You can go get some. You can rent a boat, go out on the bay for a little bit. It's fantastic. I would totally go to Annapolis.
All right, you may have convinced me then. So maybe you've made my decision for me next year. I might just pick that one then, since I've already done Maryland. I've been to a Maryland game up there anyway already.
Plus, I want some crab cakes too.
Okay, good point. Now let's do this. Let's do the audience a favor here, Jeff, because there are Knight fans that are disappointed that the Texas game is off the table now, at least for another 6 years, because a lot of them are maybe making plans to go to Austin as their one road game, let's say, or whatever. So now that that's off the table, how would you rank the UCF road games from a traveling standpoint next year? We've talked about Navy. We've talked about Maryland. They're also going to Temple in Philadelphia, another big market.
I'm ranking that one last.
We got Cincinnati and SMU. SMU, of course, in Dallas, in the area. Cincinnati, obviously, in Cincinnati. Those are your road destinations. How would you rank those 5 road games?
I would rank the Maryland I would rank the Navy and the Maryland games up at the top.
All right. And
then I would have a long way to the next one. The next one would be Dallas, because it's the Metroplex, big city. It'll be easy to get into and out of. Cincinnati would be next, because that's going to be a great road atmosphere, and it's going to be a big game, I think. And actually, no, I would rank Cincinnati up above SMU because of the significance of the game. And then dead last, of course, would be Temple.
Wow.
Because, come on, man. No one wants to go to Philadelphia. No one wants to go to Philadelphia.
Why not? Liberty Bell?
Because it's Philadelphia.
Look at you hating on Philly.
Because I would rather go to Cleveland.
No, that's getting carried away.
No, it's not. At least Cleveland has the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and
Now, a lot of this obviously would be impacted by when these games are. If you remember, the last time UCF was at SMU in 2013, it turned into the Ice Bowl. So
yeah. But I mean, that was an anomaly. I mean, you can't really.
I'm just saying. I mean, that will impact some people's decisions, like you said. Like, let's be honest. If Temple's in November, that's gonna deter a lot of some people to go to Philadelphia, or if Cincinnati's late in November, that may deter some people from going up there.
Plus, it's such a bad environment. I mean, Temple has probably the worst home field advantage in the conference. They get about 500 people a game. But
what if there's an Eagles game like the next day?
Even
can do a double.
Oh, great! Even worse. Yeah, like a Giants fan. I want to go to an Eagles game. Yeah, right. You got to be kidding me.
I'm with you. I would do the Maryland or Navy trip.
Yeah,
that would be 1-1-2. I've been to Maryland. I think it's good. I will say you get cheap tickets too. I sat right behind the visiting bench for like $5 because nobody cares about football in Maryland. So
very nice. Yeah, very nice stadium though. Bird Stadium has been around for a long time. Very nice place to see a football game.
Yeah, no, and I like the campus. I drove by the campus there when I was there in 2013. So I would recommend that one. I think you've talked me into going to Navy. I think that I've not been to Annapolis, so I could see myself doing that if I don't do both trips. I'm with you. I would do Cincinnati because obviously it's a big city and stuff like that. I think I would go with third. I'm not as anti-Philly as you are, but I would say at that point it depends. Like, when's the SMU game? When's the Temple game? What's going around it? Certainly Dallas, for example. If the Cowboys, for example, have a home game or the Rangers are in the playoffs, that might entice me to go to SMU and make a double dip out of that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I'm very big on that. I like to double dip and do sporting events like that. Like I did the year that I went to the Maryland game. Well, the reason why I went to the Maryland FIU game, that was the year, and Knights fans will remember this, UCF opened the season on that Thursday night at home against Akron, I believe, and they won very comfortably. And then they played FIU the following week. Well, FIU was opening the season at Maryland, so I was already up there, so I went up to that, and then I went to a Nationals baseball game on Sunday Night Baseball against the Mets that weekend. It was a fun weekend with the family and everything. Took my nephew and my niece to the games, and I watched FIU then. And so I kind of knew at that time, wow, UCF's going to crush them. And that's what they did the following week when I went down to Miami to see UCF crush FIU 38-0. And then the next day, when I went down to Miami that year, I went UCF FIU on Friday night. Then I went and covered the Miami-Florida game in the what's called now Hard Rock Stadium.
Whatever the hell it's called.
Whatever it's called. And then later that night, because that Miami-Florida game was a noon kickoff, I went to the Marlins home game against the Washington Nationals, ironically enough, that night. It was the first time I went to Marlins Park since it opened. So I'm big on multitasking and doing multiple things. And I think what, you've pointed out, Navy, and the reason I like Navy and I like Maryland, there's a lot of things you can schedule around that. If you could go visit DC if you want to. You could go visit the Naval Academy if you want to. Usually the Orioles or the Nationals, one of them will be in town, in September. So you could, in theory, plan on a Nationals game that weekend of the Maryland game or an Orioles game, for example. So, there's a lot of options. And that's why a lot of times I'll make those decisions based on that alone. And it could be the same thing with Philadelphia or SMU for that matter. Maybe there's a Mavericks game or there's a Sixers game or a Flyers game. It just depends. So I think the good thing, though, yes, you lose Texas, but at least I think as a fan, I think you have some attractive options, though, right, to travel?
Oh yeah, certainly, and that's the good part and I like the fact that they actually try to schedule these games. Now, UCF is in a position where they can get some really good road play. By the way, if you go to Annapolis, make sure you hit Chicken Ruth's Deli and get the crab cakes because they're amazing over there. Now, here's another thing I want to talk about. It seems right now, Eric, that the bottom is falling out of Big 12 expansion by the day. A couple things happen. Number one, this was reported by Chuck Carlton with the Dallas Morning News that David Boren, the president of the University of Oklahoma, who had been the leading proponent, along with the commissioner, Bob Bowlesby, Boren had been the leading proponent of expansion to this point, suddenly has reversed course and said, and I quote, and now this, SI was the first to report this, so Carlton's giving credit to them, but the quote from Boren is, quote, I do not know where the speculation came from, but Oklahoma has not taken a position on expansion, end quote.
What a clown. Hey, David, maybe you ought to look back at some of the comments you made during the Big 12 meetings in the past, buddy.
Which prompted T. Boone Pickens, the guy who basically owns Oklahoma State University, oil magnate, on the Austin American Statesman podcast, Pickens said, quote, I've known David forever. He likes to talk. He gets a little bit confused sometimes, end quote. This whole thing has turned into such a spectacular cluster. Now, it's left to the reporters to try and figure out, like, what does this really all mean? And I give guys credit, like Chuck Carlton credit. A lot of people have been throwing stuff up against the wall, seeing what sticks. Carlton's been really good on this, so I give him a lot of credit. The idea right now, I think, what's happening is that this is about, football in Oklahoma and Texas, which is the center of gravity of the Big 12, is about politics. We've always been saying that. Politics is the art of the possible. I believe that David Boren is not finding it possible to find 2 or 4 expansion candidates that are amenable to enough schools to get the votes that they need and the networks. And that's unfortunate because, as I've said before, the Big 12, I really believe, is playing the short-term game. We mentioned 2023 is when UCF pushed the Texas game back. That's also the year that the Big Ten's TV contract comes up next, 2023. Yep. The Big 12 grant of rights goes till 2025. I believe that the Big 12 and the presidents in it are trying to keep the conference together only until then. And they're not thinking long term. And I've said this before. If you're talking about a long-term benefit from expansion, there's no question that UCF is the school to go with. I wrote this last week during the after the USF War on I-4 rivalry thing came down, that when you look at the numbers, the sheer numbers in terms of client base, UCF is pumping out 15,000-odd graduates a year, more than UF, more than USF, more than Florida State, more than a lot of schools out there in the country right now. There is, if you're thinking long-term, UCF is a shoo-in, but that's the problem, is the Big 12 is not thinking long-term. They can't think long-term with Oklahoma and Texas already sniffing around for greener pastures. They have to think short-term, and I think when the meetings roll around now in, less than 3 weeks, 17th. October 17th, I think they're going to say they're not going to expand to anybody.
I could see them delaying that. Here's the problem. It's no secret. David Boren has, from what I've been told, and some people have speculated this, that it's covered this. He wants BYU, and he's also interested in Connecticut. Obviously, BYU is a very touchy subject with the controversy with them and the honor code.
Touchy? They're radioactive.
That's fair. I mean, you said it better than I can. But he doesn't care. He wants BYU. That's what I've been told. And he's interested in Connecticut. And other schools don't want that. So that's part of the problem. So I think part of this, he might just say, well, if you're not going to do what I want as far as the teams I want, then I'm going to take my ball and go home. And I'll just stay here. Because here's the thing. Oklahoma and Texas, you're right. In about 6 to 7 years, they can go and they'll have markets available to them. The Big Ten will go chasing them. The SEC will go chasing them. The Pac-12. So they have options. So I think that's part of the problem here, is that everybody has their own agendas. And that's why I get annoyed with this topic, because I think people somehow believe that this is some sort of open process. Like somehow everybody has a chance in this. And I have always believed
like
that
it's The Bachelor.
Correct. And that's not the case. I've always believed that Texas and Oklahoma, there's certain schools that they want. And in Oklahoma's case, they've always wanted BYU, and they've always wanted Cincinnati. And now Texas wants Houston in because of the side deals they've set with Houston and the politics and all that stuff. So to me, that's the story, is how do they get to that point? Now, I was also told that one of the other issues is this. And this is why I don't get as all up in arms about this one way or the other like some fans do, because I think most fans believe that the reason, hey, we're gonna get into this conference, it's an open market, it's the best deal for everybody,
and we're gonna make a lot of money, $25 million a year. No.
Right. That's not gonna happen. I've been told it's not gonna happen. Whoever gets in, even if they expand, let's say they just decide to expand in a year from now, 2 years from now. What they're going to do is they're going to go up to that school. Let's use Houston as an example. Hey, Houston, you want in the Big 12. All right, we'll let you in. But you're not going to make any of the extra money that we're going to make based on expanding and realignment. No. We're going to give you pretty much the same money that you've been making at the American Conference. Maybe we'll throw in some pocket change, and that'll be it. And you're going to take that deal for the next 6 to 7 years. Deal? Okay, great. That's what's going to happen. So I hope that fans don't get this. And it remember the Big East when UCF was going to the Big East and everybody envisioned, we're going to make $11 million a year and this and that. What happened, Jeff?
It blew up.
And they didn't get $11 million, did they?
Nope.
And I think that's what's going to happen here for the Big 12. They're going to be in demise because they can't help themselves. Everybody has their own agendas. And what's going to happen is, I think eventually they'll probably expand, but whoever they expand with is not going to make that much more money. They're probably going to make an extra $1 million or $2 million, maybe more than what they're currently making in their own conferences, until the conference just goes their separate ways when this contract comes out in 6, 7, 8 years. And then Oklahoma will go to a big conference, an SEC or Big Ten, and Texas will go SEC or Big Ten. And then other schools will go to the Pac-12. And then what?
Yeah.
You're left with that. So that's why I don't get caught up with it. And that's why I am 100% in agreement with Danny White's statement when he says that the goal at UCF right now is to become a top 25 athletic department. And I 100% agree with that, because if you do that, if you just worry about yourself and become a top 25 athletic department in all sports, and you become a draw, now all of a sudden you become more attractive for future possibilities. And now you put yourself in better positions. Worry about that and what you can control, and not stuff that is beyond your control. That's why I've always said I think UCF will be fine either way. I don't believe in gloom and doom and, oh, my God, what's going to happen if we don't get into the Big 12? We're just going to keep growing. We're going to keep growing.
That's a fabulous point. It's a fabulous point.
Growing.
And Mark Daniels, through his radio show's Twitter account, The Beat of Sports, echoed this when he said yesterday, we're recording this on a Wednesday night, so he said this on a Tuesday afternoon. He said, if you have to leave TV dollars on the table going in and the biggest brands won't commit long-term to stay, what exactly are you joining?
Right. Amen. Exactly. That's a fantastic point. And
The fraud that the Big 12 has perpetrated on the fans of not just UCF, but all the schools who've been involved in this expansion process borders on criminal, in my opinion.
And look, I've been told, here's one of the problems I've been told. If they even decided to expand, first of all, can they even agree on who to expand with? That's the biggest problem. But
right. That's what they're saying that Boren is saying is that it's that, they're in favor of expansion, but no one can agree on who.
Right. And here's the problem. Let's say they did agree on it. Who's going to pay them that money? Because Oklahoma and Texas will say, you guys pick up the chain. You pick up that money. You guys give that new guy that money. We're not chipping in. And then the other schools are like, what do you mean you're not going to chip in? If you're not going to chip in, why should we chip in? And that's the kind of stuff that's going on with this nonsense. And look, I can tell you that, I mean, there was reported recently on the Oklahoma papers, the Big 12 was naive enough. They thought as of June and July, they still thought they had a shot to get Florida. There were some schools that thought they had a shot to get Florida State and Clemson once the ACC deal went through. And then what happened? The ACC got the TV network. The only reason why the Big 12 even announced that they wanted to expand is because they got all mad because the ACC told them we don't have the money for a Big 12 network, but then they went ahead and write a deal to get the ACC network. That's what this is about.
Plus, plus the fact that the ACC locked up all its schools in another grant of rights, so you can't pry them out of there.
Untouchable. Correct. And this is where now the Big 12 is getting to a problem because they're starting to tick people off. Let me read you this tweet. Chris Fowler, who is the voice now of college football, all right, and the most powerful network for college football. This is what he tweeted out about earlier this week. Quote on Twitter, is the Big 12 expanding? I don't know. But I know this, my interest in following the various twists and turns is contracting rapidly. In other words,
join the club, Chris.
No, but that's the thing. You're agitating people with this. It's kind of like the cry wolf. Well, we're going to expand. Well, we're not going to expand. Well, we're going to expand. Well, we're not going to. I think you lose credibility if you're the Big 12 the more you do this. So it'll be interesting what they come out with on October 17th from a statement standpoint. I agree with you. I've said this for the last 2 months. I felt if they were going to expand in this calendar year or early next year, it was going to be Houston and Cincinnati or bust. I don't think they're going to do that because I just don't think they just can't get on the same page. And I think there's serious questions when they expand and with who they expand and how productive that's going to be for everybody. This is not a league that, to me, has a bright future. I think it's headed in the same direction that the old Big East did. And look, again, from a UCF standpoint, I've said it. They're going to be fine either way. It's because you got to grow your brand. You didn't lose anything. You know, schools like USF Connecticut, they lost something. They were in a power conference, and they're not anymore. UCF didn't lose that. And I think UCF's still growing. And there will be opportunities down the road in the future, whether it be 8 years, 10 years, 20 years. But if you build your product and you build your brand, then people will come knocking on your door.
And as I had said, and I refer back to this in the column I wrote about the war on I-4, 15,000 graduates a year, man. 15,000 people donating to the athletic department, going to games as alumni, and over the long term, You're going to get a lot of big donors over time, but it's a long-term process. It's not going to happen overnight. UCF's administration knows that. They're not stupid. But this Big 12 story is stupid. It's the stupidest story in all of college sports, and I would like to be done with it now. What do you say?
Amen. Move on. Just focus on the field.
One last thing, though, I will say, and we're going to get a lot of people saying, well, what does Chris Fowler know? Chris Fowler knows stuff. This guy is the ace in the hole for ESPN on-air talent. As far as I'm concerned, if he says it, this is not Chris Fowler pulling a Bill Simmons. Okay,
no.
This is this to me, in my opinion. I'm just one guy, but in my opinion, this has the weight of basically a corporate statement.
And by the way, because people have thrown this out there, well, does the Big 12 really need ESPN to make their new deal and stuff like that if ESPN's not happy with them? Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. They control college football. The playoff's going to be there, and ESPN's going to do everything they do to keep it. You better make sure ESPN's happy. That's why
the BCS ESPN and the playoff did not happen without ESPN say so.
So if ESPN tells you, Big 12, hey, you're not expanding, then guess what? You're probably not going to expand. And remember, they still own the Longhorn Network, so there's not much. It's not like they're still going to have some control. So I just think that I thought it was a mistake for the Big 12 to even announce the expanding process. They should have said, you know what, we're just putting that in the back burner. Let's enjoy this football season and do that service to their athletic teams. But clearly they didn't because they're idiots, and it is what it is.
All right, let's be done with this story now before we get any more angry. All right, let's move on to what else is going on in UCF world. Volleyball on the road for the first time in conference play this year. The Knights 12-3, off to a great start. Won their first two conference matches at home in dominant fashion over USF and Memphis. We talked about the USF match last week, but the Memphis match was a pretty impressive victory over a team that was actually pretty undersized. But the Knights, believe it or not, if you're going up to Greenville and you're going to be there a day early, go to the UCF at East Carolina volleyball match.
See, now you're thinking like
Friday night.
Double dip.
Yep, Friday night, 5:30 p.m. in Greenville. UCF and East Carolina support the Knights. Give on a critical road match, okay? Because after that, Sunday they go to Cincinnati. That match is at 1 p.m. That's going to be a big one for the Knights too. That Cincinnati match. And Todd Dagenet, the head coach, has talked before about the significance of those Sunday matches, particularly on the road. See if you could steal a couple of them. That would be a nice match for them to steal before they come home. October 7th, Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. Before the Tulane football game is the volleyball match against Houston. Make sure you come out to the venue for that. That's Friday, October 7th at 4 p.m. Get out of work early. It's fun. Soccer. Moving into conference play, the women's team. And even though they had the difficulties with the early season schedule, right now they're standing at 5-4. They're finally going to be back out there. They had an 11-day layoff. They will be playing on the 29th, Thursday at 7 p.m. at home against Houston, and then Sunday, October 2nd against SMU. The Knights, like I said, 5-4, but their four losses were to nationally ranked Florida, nationally ranked Duke, nationally ranked North Carolina, and nationally ranked South Carolina. So, and of course, they've been scoring a lot of goals of late, in particular in the games against FIU, Florida Gulf Coast. This will be a big match for them on Thursday, the 29th. Now's the time for them, right, to get going in conference play right now, huh?
No question. This is what you've been playing for. You played a tough schedule. You scheduled a tough schedule to get yourself ready for the conference, and that's begins against Houston. But yeah, right. They're absolutely right. This is a team. And I think there's been a lot of positives from an offensive standpoint. They've shown they face adversity coming back from deficits, 2-goal deficits on multiple occasions. This is what it's all about. And especially with that program, they know what's at stake. They didn't win the regular season title or the conference tournament last year. They still made the NCAAs and at large, but, and I know internally they were disappointed with that. You've got USF, you've got Connecticut there, probably the two top contenders. As I've mentioned before in the previous podcast, the team that wins the regular season championship will have the opportunity to host the conference tournament, potentially on their racket, as I like to say. So these games are big, and it's big for UCF, and this is a good start to get going home. It'll be interesting how they come out 11 days. There's pros and cons to that. The positive, you could say, they're very fresh. They should be fresh, healthy, rested. The concern would be, are they too rested? Are they going to come out rusty? Who knows? We'll find out. But this is where the getting good, because usually you can only really afford maybe one conference loss if you want to win the regular season title. Maybe tiebreakers come into play, but these will be very important matches, and you don't want to take anybody lightly in the conference, and especially UCF, because they're going to be the target when women's soccer, when they see UCF on the schedule, they circle that game, and there will be no difference. So should be interesting how they get off to a start in conference play. Yeah,
not only that, but also the fact that you got to defend the home field also, and that's key. Men's soccer, coming off of a tough 2-1 loss to USF in the war on I-4. That's 6 points to USF in the standings right there, 2-1 at UCF with a 65th minute goal. Back at it October 1st, this Saturday, 7 p.m. So after the East Carolina football game, if you head over to the UCF Soccer and Track Complex, you can see the Knights take on SMU, again, Saturday at 7 p.m. Pretty good SMU team, by the way. And a team that's and a UCF men's soccer team that's gotten off to that rough start right now, 1-5. We mentioned the schedule problems that they've had with 2 games being canceled, 2 of them potentially winnable games, certainly. And now coming toward the end of this long homestand, 2 more games on the long homestand before they go out on the road for 3 consecutive in the early to middle part of October. So tough break for men's soccer heading in there, but we'll see what they can do against SMU. All right, so as we head to this big weekend with football on the road, soccer at home, what are you looking forward to the most, Eric?
Well, obviously the football game will be at the front end, but I'm going to give you one off the curveball here. UCF softball will begin fall ball this weekend. So I will be actually heading out there at some point this weekend and check them out. A lot of new faces. So I'm actually looking forward to that. I'm going to see the new faces, get to recognize the new face, because there's a lot of them. That, the last couple of years I've been spoiled in that I pretty much knew who was coming back and who was who, and it was pretty much, I know her and I know her. This year it's a little different. I'm going to actually take some notes. So they're playing Friday and Saturday. You can check out UCFKnights.com with that schedule, but more than likely I'll probably head out there Saturday, but maybe Friday night, who knows? But that's actually what I'm looking forward to, that and the football game.
Yeah, 2 things I wanted to mention, too, also that I'm actually interested in here. Tennis coming up. Men's tennis actually just got their preseason underway under their new head coach, John Roddick. In Athens, Georgia, at the Southern Intercollegiates. Couple guys getting some, more than a few nights getting some victories over there. The women's tennis season actually starts this weekend. They're playing in the Bedford Cup, which is hosted by USF over in Tampa. And so we'll see women's tennis fall schedule getting underway. That leads up to the ITA regionals, which are in late October, and then a Florida State Invitational in November. There's also Florida Gulf Coast Invitational out in Tampa in early October before the spring season starts, and the regular season starts for both of those squads. So I'm looking forward to seeing what tennis can do, and women's tennis in particular, in their opening schedule for the fall. All right, Eric, well, we'll wrap up with a quick prediction for the football game. UCF is 3.5-point dogs. You taking the points or what?
Wow. 3.5? Yeah, give me UCF getting 3.5. I'll do that.
Give me UCF too, 3.5. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be high scoring. And I think it's going to be one of those toss-up games. It's going to be really hard for me to say. All right, so that's going to do it for us here at the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Eric Lopez, where can people find you this weekend?
Eric Lopez Elo on Twitter. I will be on Tuck and O'Neill. Of course, I produce Tuck and O'Neill weekdays on Sports Talk 1080 The Team Orlando, 3 to 7. I will be co-hosting with Mike Tuck on Friday because Jerry's on his way to Greenville. So if you're listening to this and it's Friday, go to tune that in. And then also be hosting the Sports Talk Florida Insider Show from Universal Hyundai at the corner of 417 Orange Blossom Trail on Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Hosting the Football Insider Show 6 to 7 this Monday night from Harry Buffalo in downtown Orlando. And you're going to join me on that one. You're going to call in.
That's right. We're going to call in, talk a little Giants.
Yep. And recap the UCF ECU game, talk UCF. But yes, Giants, Vikings, the Monday Night Football game will take place. And then make a note, ladies and gentlemen, a week from this Friday, October the 7th, our very own Jeffrey Sharon. You'll be filling in on Tuck and O'Neill.
That's right.
Joining me, Mr. Jerry O'Neill.
That's right. I cannot wait for that, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for advocating for me. I want to thank Mike for being out of town, and I want to thank Jerry for agreeing to have me on the show too, because Jerry's the best. I mean, we've been passing each other and like ships in the night almost since basically for 15 years now since I was a student, and I have so much respect and admiration for him and Mark and the guys who've been doing the UCF radio for so long, and working with Jerry is always a pleasure. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I thank you, Eric, for advocating for me on that one. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you get a chance to complete the set because I know you've co-hosted with Mike Tuck in the past. In fact, you did that on the Black Friday, if I remember. The 2014 UCF USF game is one that came to mind. You were able to.
That's correct. Yeah, Jerry was down in Tampa, and Mike and I hosted that show. Yeah. So
now you'll get to do it with Jerry, which is an experience in itself. So I'm glad to help you make that work. So that'll be fun next Friday. So there'll be a lot of UCF football talk, I have a feeling, between the two of you on that episode on that Friday, October 7th, which is the game day. Think about this. You and Jerry will be on right prior to that UCF Tulane football game. So it'll be on game day. I'm on a game day. So that'll be fun. So we'll get more details about that on our next podcast. But I hope everybody enjoys the games this weekend. Volleyball, soccer, we wish them all the best.
All right. And again, Eric Lopez, ELO on Twitter for you. Thanks for joining me again, brother.
Always a pleasure, Jeffrey.
All right. You can follow me at Jeff_Sharon. You can follow us at UCF_Banneret on Twitter. Subscribe to our email list, and also look us up on Facebook. Look up Black and Gold Banneret. So for Eric Lopez, my name is Jeff Sharon. Thanks for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll catch you next week.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.